Hello, BookTube. In my never-ending quest to achieve semi-acceptable lighting, I have moved to yet another location here. I've got some mail for you. A nice, healthy stack of mail that ends in a box. So let's see what we have here. Let's see if there's anything squeal-worthy. Okay, the first one is a finished copy, an October book. My October shelf is growing. To put it mildly, to put it nice and gently, it's growing. This is by Rebecca Fishbein, and it is Good Things Happen to People You Hate. It's a collection of essays. Good things happen to people you hate. It's true. It's true. Why do the wicked prosper? One of the Bible's many unanswerable questions. With dry humor, honed by her many years of writing in online media landscape, Rebecca Fishbein, who is very young, she's a former senior editor at Gothamist, and is a current writer, prolific tweeter, and television addict living in Brooklyn. Not sure any of those things are viable professions. Prolific tweeter. He's in your bio note. Okay. And this is her first book, which offers a refreshing take on the early aughts and commiseration over the many problems of our time. This hilarious and raw essay collection shows how Fishbein's adult life has been a dramatic reflection of the New York media itself, constantly evolving in unexpected ways and seemingly always on the edge of disaster. Rebecca has seen it all. 3 bedbug infestations, an evil billionaire buying her employer, a small media company, resulting in her unemployment, being yelled at while floor managing an American Apparel, losing all her stuff in a freak apartment fire, and the one time she was bullied online by angry Taylor Swift fans. Okay, so missing from that is deploying to Iraq or Vietnam, but okay, so she was bullied by Taylor Swift fans online. Who among us does not know the unique torture of malicious teens getting a hold of your Instagram? No comment. With so much chaos in the news cycle, Rebecca digests our new reality in a way that's funny enough for us to face it all. But the real humor and meat of this essay collection comes from Rebecca's unwavering honesty and unflinching examination of her 20-something struggles with alcohol, anxiety, depression, compulsive lying, female beauty standards, and a slew of failed co-worker/roommate/friend semi-relationships, which are at once insightful, bracingly honest, and hilarious. Okay. All right. Well, observation number 1, there aren't going to be any essays in this book. These are going to be stand-up comedy routines. We've seen this many, many times before. These will not be... If you are going to call the things that are in this book essays, then what are you going to call Thoreau? So that's thing number 1. And thing number 2, of course, if we're going just by the lights of the pub sheet, then the author sounds utterly insufferable. She sounds like the type of person who would organize instantly, reflexively, without even thinking, organize a social media hate mob if you said you didn't like her book. That is just, she sounds, from that pub sheet, like the kind of person who would just consider that to be as normal a reaction as sneezing, when that is in fact fascism. And so I'm going to have to hope that the little bits and pieces, the little Jerry Seinfeld snuggets in here, are considerably better than is hinted at in that pub sheet, because that would be pretty bad. We'll have to see. A lot of it will depend. That avid, prolific Twitter, that mention of being a prolific Twitter person, someone who lives on Twitter, I have had lots of experience with people who live on Twitter, and none of it has been good. I can hardly say that about anything else at all that I've ever encountered in my life. Construction workers bawling out sexist epithets on the sidewalk. Okay, I've had plenty of exposure to them, and despite the fact that they do that, they haven't all been bad people. Neocon warhawks in the Washington halls of power. I have met a few of those people, and despite the obnoxiousness of their views, they haven't all been negative people. They haven't all been horrible examples of humanity. But people who spend all day on Twitter, who live on Twitter, who are prolific Twitter people, I've never met one of those who wasn't, to use one of their own favorite phrases, garbage. So we shall see. I have high hopes that this is just, that the pub sheet is probably, this is due in mid-October. I'm hoping that the pub sheet was just going for an edgy readership that I am obviously not a part of, but that the essays speak to a broader readership than that. So we're off to a rocky start. I'm hoping that that's the case. So it's right around the corner. So I will read it and I will report back. The fact that the author is very young and has had almost nothing in the way of life experiences doesn't sit well with the underlying tone that I detected in the pub sheet, that the author thinks that she basically has nothing left to learn in life in her late 20s. Those two things don't sit well together, so we'll see. We'll see. She's, of course, not responsible for her pub sheet, and she's not responsible for her demographic either. That's an important thing to remember. Her demographic, the bedbug demographic, the spend all day on Twitter demographic, is by and large virulently loathsome. But she's not responsible for that. And she might be an exception. There are plenty of exceptions. I know plenty of you are exceptions. So let's see what this next one is. Okay, this next one is a thriller. This comes out in March from Thomas and Mercer. They're the thriller arm of Amazon Publishing. This is by Jason Pinter, and it is Hideaway, or Hideaway, whichever, whether it's a noun or an instruction. And Jason Pinter sounds very familiar to me. That name sounds very familiar to me. Why is that? Let's go straight to his author bio so that it doesn't drive me crazy. Okay, he's very young. He is the internationally best-selling author of the Henry Parker thriller series. Oh, okay. The first of the Henry Parker books was a book called The Mark, and it was fantastic. That must have been 10 years ago. The standalone thriller The Castle, and 2 children's books. He's been nominated for the Thriller Award, the Strand Critics Award, the Barry Award, the Shamus Award, and more. The Fury and the Darkness were both chosen as Indie Next selections, and The Mark, The Stolen, and The Fury were all named to the Strand's Best Books of the Year list. The Mark was optioned to be a feature film, and there are over 1.5 million copies of Jason's books in print worldwide. Good for him. Good for him. Okay, well, I didn't read any of the follow-ups, but I read The Mark and loved it, and this is that author. So what have we got here? To what extremes would you go to keep your family safe? All right, we're already on explosive ground. If you're a Boston Irish Catholic family from South Boston, you might be willing to drop a dime on them. It's not even a question of how far you go to keep them safe. It's how much you'd be willing to be involved in making them unsafe. But I assume this refers to normal families. Families from Boston Irish Catholic, South Boston in the mid-20th century were not normal. This is the question that best-selling author Jason Pinter was consumed by when he became a parent for the first time and felt infinite love for his tiny infant daughter, as well as the overwhelming need to protect her from all the world's dangers. And it became the premise of his new thriller series centering on vigilante hero and mother Rachel Martin, which launches with Hideaway. Oh, okay, so this comes out on March the 1st, 2020, and is the first in a new series, featuring Rachel Martin, who is an enigma. She seems to be a typical suburban single mom trying to balance work and life, make ends meet, and be a good and supportive parent to her 2 young children, but she is anything but ordinary. An unimaginable crime shattered her family 7 years prior, causing her to change her and her children's identities and move to a small town in Illinois. She's determined that no one in her family will ever be victim again, and to prepare, she's put herself through extensive physical and mental training in combat, investigation, and surveillance. So out of her trauma, she has fashioned herself into a weapon. Fantastic. Oh, man. So when the former mayor of her town is reported dead, Rachel's carefully honed deduction skills kick in. The local detectives dismiss the death as suicide, but she sees that the clues point to murder. The authorities resent her for butting in and attempt to thwart her from getting further involved. Oh, boy. Okay. All right. Well, I know already that I like this author. So this just sounds all the more intriguing. Fantastic. Okay. All right. So this is a 2020 book. Don't have to worry about it until then. But Thomas and Mercer, Amazon Publishing. It's another. I just noticed I've got these things growing out of my head. That's all right. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The books that I get from them, I read everything that they send me. And the books that I get from them very much point at a very good, very smart editorial team making these picks. And I'm wondering, of course, if Jason Pinter is getting a better deal than he did for The Mark came out from a normal publisher, not Amazon. I'm wondering what kind of a deal he's getting from them that would cause him to migrate to them. But anyway, that's fantastic. Oh, Oh, this next one has satisfying weight to it. This could be a big fat finished copy or something. This has satisfying heft. Very nice. Oh, okay, it's not. Oh, fantastic. Oh, great. It's not a big fat finished copy. Instead, it's a big fat trade paperback. So this comes out in paperback now. This is out already. And this is a book I've already praised on this channel. This is Abbas Amanat's Iran, A Modern History, in a lovely new trade from Yale. Fantastic. They kept the cover design. That's great. Cover design, very beautiful. A little bit muddy on this particular camera, but this is going to be stacked as a paperback in your local bookstore. And this is out in paperback. Fantastic. Okay, so this was adorned with blurbs, none by me, none by yours truly, I bet, although I did praise this book. Probably I praised it for The National, on the other side of the world, and nobody ever notices those reviews. Nobody ever sees them. But this comes out on September 24th. It combines chronological and thematic approaches, exploring events with lasting implications for modern Iran and the world. I thought it was fantastic, just fantastic. Not lachrymose, not jingoistic, just masterful, broad brush history in just the way that it should be done. Fantastic. So this is coming out in trade paperback. That's great. I don't think I have it. I think I got rid of the hardcover that I had, so I'm glad to have this trade paperback. Great. All right. We're doing fine. We're doing fine so far. Let's see what this next one is. Okay, this is from Harvard University Press. This is probably out already. No, it comes out in late October. Okay, this is by Stephen Weber, and it is block by block. How to build a global enterprise for the new regional order. What new regional order? I'm interested. At a time when globalization is taking a step backward, what's the best way to organize a global enterprise? The key, explains political economist Stephen Weber, is to prepare for a world increasingly made up of competing regions defined by their own rules and standards. So we're just assuming that globalism, that any move in that direction is over forever. If you're long-term planning your business as if there's no such thing, there's just going to be balkanized enclaves, then you're obviously planning on globalism being a failed idea. Interesting. That seems like a gamble to me. A decade ago, it seemed as if the future belonged to free trade. Tariffs and transportation costs were failing year after year. They still fail. The global economy looked as if it would become a level playing field where firms, wherever they were based, would compete under the common rules imposed by the World Trade Organization. The world was becoming flat, as Thomas Friedman wrote. Today, that view seems, so a few typos in this thing, sorry. That view seems naive, as obstacles to trade have reasserted themselves. But we don't yet have a clear idea of the challenges and what new economic world might look like. Okay, well, the mere mention of that word economic has sealed this book's fate. It will be winging its way to the upper Midwest as soon as I can get to a post office. I have David Murphy to look at these things and decide what to write about them so that I don't have to learn all about the World Trade Organization in order to bring myself up to some sort of toddler level of comprehension. Great. So he's got some incoming. Don't tell him. So let's see what this next one is. Also hefty. I didn't make any predictions. I was wrong the last time. Glad to have that Iran, A Modern History. Very glad to have that in trade paperback. Glad to have a copy here in I just almost said the store here at Hyde Cottage. Okay. We saw this already. This is from the folks at Yale. We saw this in its advanced copy, and I haven't got to it yet. This is Frank Snowden. Not the Snowden book everybody's talking about, but it's certainly more up my line of country than Edward Snowden's. This comes out in late October, and this is Epidemics and Society, from the Black Death to the Present. We saw this in advance copy. A lot of you seemed interested in it. Through the centuries, mass outbreaks of disease have transformed the arts, religion, intellectual history, and warfare, as well as science and public health practices. In Epidemics and Society, to be published in October by Yale, the author illuminates the connection between epidemic diseases and societal change, from Black Death to Ebola. Interesting. Well, I'm always up for a study of pandemics. Always. It's just so fascinating. And there is a wide variety. There's a selection of them in every season, in every publishing season. So that's great. This comes out in late October, and it has advanced praise from a bunch of people who've already got looks at it. And the author is the Andrew Downey Orrick Professor Emeritus of History and the History of Medicine at Yale University. Okay, well, I'm on board anyway. This is a subject I love, so glad to have a finished copy. That's great. All right, we're slowly making our way towards the box. We have one more to go, and then we're at the box. So let's see what this one is. Another finished copy. Good Lord. What have we got here? Okay. All right. This is from the Harvard University Press. This is This is the selected writings of Konstantinos DePandi, translated and with new introduction and notes by Elena Salikoglu. Okay, so this is not an ancient figure at all. This is a rather drab cover. Not much to look at there. This comes out in early October. One of the 18th century's most prolific writers. Oh, that was me. Writers and scholars from the 19th century to the present day never cease to be intrigued by the life and work of Konstantinos DePandi, who lived from 1713 to 1784. A curious and captivating individual who left a lasting mark on the cultural landscape of the Greek-speaking world in the 18th century. One of the most prolific writers of his time, with over 19 volumes to his name, and a number of neglected manuscripts in libraries and monasteries in Greece and elsewhere. How fascinating. Oh, man. DePandi was also one of the few individuals who recorded his adventurous life in a systematic and surprisingly detailed fashion. And in doing so, he bequeathed to his readers an abundance of autobiographical and confessional writings, a rare genre for this period of Greek culture. This book offers an English rendition of DePandi's idiosyncratic poem, Canon of Hymns Comprising Many Exceptional Things, and selected passages from other important works of his, including Mirror of Women, Geographical History, and Letters on Pride and Vanity in Human Life. And it's a new translation with new notes, new supporting apparatus. Incredible. Okay, well, I don't need to know the genesis of the thing. It's fascinating in its own right. I don't think I've ever read anything by this author. Have you? It sounds like... I wonder what kind of... it's bilingual, too. This is the second Greek to English bilingual book I've got this week. I wonder, if he was such a prolific writer, I wonder what his survival was like. I'm a prolific writer during the 18th century, but, in 1940... what was the state of his English language translations, for instance? I wonder if there were any. I wonder if he's known outside the Greek world, the Greek-speaking world. Boy, well, he'll be known to me. that's for sure. All right, fantastic. I never know what you're going to get. I never know what I'm going to get in the mail. It's so wonderful. I mean, I stand in awe of reviewers of Publishing World Friends who have a niche and have carved out a niche, and that is their patch, and they know it better than anybody. I stand in awe of such people, but I don't know that I would want to be one of them. I like being an all-purpose generalist. Although, I have plenty of friends who would say, you're not an all-purpose generalist. You love dead emperors, dead Kennedys, and dogs. But that's only a preference. That's not the stuff that I read and write about. I write about all sorts of things. I've written more reviews about epidemic books, for instance, than I would be willing to bet most people. All right, what have we got here? All right, this is the box, and it is fighting me. Fortunately, I have scissors nearby. You must always have scissors nearby. Let's get this open. There we go. What could this be? What have we got here? To finish out our mail for right now. Oh, it's multiple books. Oh, wonderful. It's 2 books. Okay, so what have we got here? These are 2 books from Boisterous and Giroux. Okay. Oh boy, this is going to appeal to some of you a lot more than it does to me. That's for sure. Okay, so this is unfortunate. This comes out in early December. We've talked about that before. It's unfortunate when books come out in December because it's a lean and neglected month. People will be, book section editors will be looking first towards their upcoming long vacation and then towards 2020, and book reviewers will be too. So I try to give everybody in December as much attention as I can because they won't going to get it otherwise. So what have we got here? Is this... Okay, so this is going to be a feast for Robert Lowell fans among you. and a little bit of a feast for yours truly, for connected reasons. This is 2 volumes from Farrar, Straus and Giroux. The first one is 2 different versions of Robert Lowell's famous poem, The Dolphin. So that's kind of sort of what it's going to look like. This comes out in early December. Let's see here. I'm delighted to share with you an expanded edition of the Pulitzer Prize-winning collection of poetry, The Dolphin, 2 versions, by Robert Lowell. Winner of the 1974 Pulitzer Prize in Poetry, The Dolphin was controversial from the beginning. Many of the poems include the letters that Robert Lowell's wife, the celebrated writer and critic Elizabeth Hardwicke, wrote to him after he left her for an English socialite and writer Caroline Blackwood. He was warned by many, among them Elizabeth Bishop, that, quote, art just isn't worth that much. Nevertheless, these poems are a powerful document of an impulsive love and a moving record of Lowell's change from one life and marriage in America to a new life on new terms with a new family in England, rendered with the stunning technical power and control for which he was so celebrated. Might be catching a glimpse here of why I don't particularly care for this author. This new edition, which follows the 1973 edition, includes an introduction by its editor, Saskia Hamilton, and scans of the pages of Lowell's original manuscript, giving us a look into the brilliant and complicated mind of one of the most beloved and distinguished poets, and Heel, and Cad. But the pub sheet doesn't go on to say that. Okay, so this is coming out at the same time. Let me see if I can sketch this out for you. This is coming out at the same time as this, The Dolphin Letters, 1970 to 1979, between Elizabeth Hardwicke, Robert Lowell, and their circle of friends. So this is a separate book. They are very much a pair. I'm certain that if they are reviewed, they will be reviewed as a pair. I'm delighted to share with you the correspondence between one of the most famous couples of 20th century literature. This landmark book, edited by Saskia Hamilton, so she's been busy, offers an unprecedented portrait of Robert Lowell and Elizabeth Hardwicke during the last 7 years of Lowell's life, from 1970 to 1977, a time of personal crisis and creative innovation for both writers. Centered on the letters they exchanged with each other and with other members of their circle, writers, intellectuals, friends, publishers, including Elizabeth Bishop, Caroline Blackwood, Mary McCarthy, and Adrienne Rich, the book has a narrative sweep of a novel telling the story of the dramatic breakup of Lowell and Hardwicke's 21-year marriage and their extraordinary but late reconciliation. Okay, Lowell's controversial sonnet sequence, The Dolphin, for which he used Hardwicke's letters as a source, and his last book, Day by Day, were written during this period, as were Hardwicke's influential books Seduction and Betrayal and Sleepless Nights. In their correspondence, Lowell and Hardwicke are acutely intelligent observers of marriages, children, friends, and of the feelings that their personal crises gave rise to. So, obviously, it's the second volume that's going to interest me. That's really going to interest me the most. So Dolphin Letters comes out again in early December, same time as the Dolphin 2 versions. For some reason that I might be reading this wrong. This might just be. I'm hoping that I'm reading this wrong. For some reason, the sell sheet here is telling me that the hardcover that this is coming out as on December 10th is going to be $50, and I don't know why that would be so. So I'm going to hope that I'm reading that wrong, or that there's some aspect of it that I'm not understanding. Maybe it comes with DNA samples from both Lowell and Hardwicke. I don't know. Again, I don't know what would. This is going to be. Yeah, it even says it on the back, $50. Okay, I don't understand that, but I'll check around and see. Boy, oh boy, okay, heavily annotated. This is the kind of letter collection that I really, really like. So great. Okay, so obviously I'm going to be interested in one of these things more than the other, but still glad to have them both. Can't wait to see what kind of coverage they'll get. So that was the box. That was what was in the box here. So we've got 2 Robert Lowell books, a new critical edition of a poem, and a big collection of correspondence from the last 7 years of his life. Pretty fascinating. No matter what you think of Lowell, pretty fascinating. In fact, his whole mail haul was fascinating. So we have that. We have Konstantinos DePandi's selected writings, a very slim volume considering how much the guy has written. I would expect it to be much bigger. Maybe they have many planned. Then we have Epidemics and Society. Big new history of not only the major marquee diseases, all the way from SARS to Ebola to the Black Death and whatnot, the Spanish flu, but also a broader look at how they changed societies. That makes it extra fascinating for me. Then Block by Block, an economics guide for how to build a business in a balkanized, non-globalist society, which is going out by mail to poor, beleaguered David Murphy for him to see what he can make out of it. Then Abbas Amanat's Iran, A Modern History. I cannot recommend this book highly enough. This is the new trade paperback, which I guess I should have said. Let's see. I don't want to. This is probably $30. Okay, it doesn't. The pub sheet doesn't tell me. It won't be cheap, of course. Academic hardcover or paperbacks never are, but it'll be half the price of the hardcover, which also wasn't cheap. And I highly recommend it. This is a wonderful book. And if you're not flush, then find it at your library, because it's worth your time to sit down and just hunker with it. Then Hide Away by Jason Pinter. A new thriller by the author of The Mark, which is a book that I really liked, so I'm all for a new thriller, absolutely. And finally, Good Things Happen to People You Hate, a collection of nonfiction pieces by Rebecca Fishbein. Thin thing that should be out right away. It should be out relatively soon, October release. So, and it sounds to me like it's going to deal with a lot of zillennial frustrations. The collapse of the support system, the annoyance of boomers, all that sort of thing. And some of that has legitimate fire behind it. So it could be that this author will sweep me away. That could happen. Her demographic group has got to start fielding authors who can do that sooner or later. So I will be reading it. I'll be reading all these things with interest, but I'm going to have to resist the urge with this mail haul, this particular mail haul. I'm going to have to resist the urge to simply sit down and read the Amanat again from front to back. It's 1,000 pages long, and I cannot justify that. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit down with it and think, well, I just want to read, just let me read a little bit of it, and then I'm just going to end up reading the whole thing again. I hope not, because I have a lot of stuff to do. I still have September books to read, for God's sake. September is dying. October is looming on the horizon. I still have tons of September stuff to get to. Anyway, you didn't come to this channel to hear me complain. Oh, I'll wrap this up. I will be back soon. Thank you, Book 2.